Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing why Dead by Daylight needs competition, and why VHS the game and Evil Dead the game are both great starts to giving Dead by Daylight a run for their money. So, with that being said, let's get right into it, and why Dead by Daylight needs competition. So, to start out, Dead by Daylight mostly has like sort of a monopoly over the asymmetrical survival horror games genre. Now, there was other games that tried, and a lot of them failed. Well, like 90% of them failed. The other ones, the ones that weren't that bad, like let's say Friday the 13th, I actually thought Friday the 13th was a really good game, but unfortunately the legal issues, revolving around the Friday the 13th franchise as a whole kind of killed that game. So it's not like Friday the 13th failed in the sense that it was a terrible game. I actually thought it was pretty good. It had a lot of bugs and stuff, but it was still a pretty good game. But the legal issues just capped that game, and then basically because there's no more content coming out for that game for now over 3 years, I think 2018 is when the development of that game pretty much stopped, in the sense that they couldn't make any more content after the lawsuit. Well, after that it was basically a wrap, because there was only like a couple maps. There was like 5 maps, 5 normal maps, and then there was like 3 small ones, so there was like 8, only like, I don't know, 10 Jasons or something like that. They were obviously planning on adding more, but that didn't happen, unfortunately, due to the lawsuit. So because Dead by Daylight essentially has a monopoly over the genre, Behavior Interactive can get away with like anything they want, because it already has a fan base, and there's nobody threatening them, in the sense that there's no competition for the game. So like, let's say for example like Disney. Okay, Disney is a big monopoly over the movie genre. So for example like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they can put out these same type of movies, which, you know, a lot of people like the MCU, and I do too for the most part, but notice in the past couple of years the MCU has kind of declined in terms of quality, and a lot of people have started to see like, okay, what's going on here, especially with the new recent like Eternals movie. So you see that companies, when they have a monopoly, they can kind of get away with a lot of bullshit just to cut right through it and get right to it. You know, a lot of companies like this can get away with stuff like that because they don't have anybody threatening them. Now, if Disney were to have a big competitor, and Disney does have big competitors, but there's nobody competing with them in the sense of the cinematic universe landscape or whatever, right? So it's kind of the same thing with Dead by Daylight. Like, Behavior doesn't have many competitors. I mean, for now, I don't think they have any competitors until VHS and Evil Dead the game come out. And I'll lay out why VHS the game and Evil Dead the game both have really good chances of being big competitors for the game later. But because of Dead by Daylight's essential monopoly over the horror asymmetrical survival genre of games, multiplayer-wise, they don't really get threatened, and they really, when the community asks for certain things, it seems like they take their time with a lot of these things, or sometimes just don't address them at all. And I'll go into a few examples about what exactly I'm talking about specifically. So to start out, for one, the balancing issues. There's been a lot of balancing issues for Dead by Daylight for years now. I mean, and a lot of them just have gone unaddressed. And I'm not saying that Dead by Daylight does nothing wrong. Does everything wrong. Excuse me. I'm just saying that they do a lot wrong, and they tend to piss off the community quite a bit. But in terms of like balancing, a lot of killer mains have seen like the game is pretty unbalanced. Like me, who plays both Survivor and Killer, I have like, I don't know, 4,000 hours on the game or something like that, maybe even more. I can see how easy Survivor is, especially at red rank in the game, compared to Killer is. Killer's insanely sweaty, really try hard. You have to be just sweating constantly in order to be able to have a chance, especially when you're not playing one of the S tier killers like Nurse or Spirit or Blight at this point. So this is something that Dead by Daylight fans have wanted addressed for years, and they have done changes that have kind of helped things out, but it seems like they always do 2 steps forward, or 1 step forward and then 2 steps back. Like, they'll make a great change and then they'll, you know, retroactively go back on that change by messing something else up, which is really unfortunate, because a lot of Killer players, you know, such as myself, get very frustrated when it seems like Killer mains and that side of the game just kind of gets shafted for Survivor players, which is really unfortunate. For example, like the gen speed was something that people, you know, is still something that people complain about, in the sense that gens just go so fast. If you don't capitalize on the beginning of the game, especially for certain killers like setup killers like the Trapper or the Hag, or one of my favorite killers, Michael, he has to build up his power over time in the game. So it just becomes very difficult for you to be able to keep up with the survivors when you have to set up for the first, couple minutes of the game. Especially because at that point, by the time you're in tier 2, or by the time you have a few traps set, you could already have a gen or two popping, which, it really depends on the team, but it can be very rough when you get a team like that. Now, another big problem is that, in terms of, like, whenever they release a chapter, it seems like a lot of chapters come out with a lot of bugs. I mean, for example, like, the Resident Evil chapter. That chapter just came out this year, and literally people couldn't play the RPD map for like a month or two, almost. Like, it came out, then they took it out of the game, then it was like a month or two later when RPD was actually fully enabled for the game, and hasn't had any problems since, outside of it being a map that a lot of people don't like. But that's neither here nor there. If the map is something that people don't like, that's whatever. But not being able to play the map when you purchased the chapter because it's bugged out, that's a bit of a problem, especially since you paid for the chapter. There's been numerous other bugs as well. I think since like the Twins chapter, it's been like really bad. Like, every single chapter comes out and it's bugged. Like, they disable a lot of things. More specifically, recently, Michaela, her perk, what was it? Healing Circle of Healing, Hex or Boon Circle of Healing. That perk was disabled for like a week or two or whatever after it came out. And it's like, it seems like Behavior just kind of rushes out chapters instead of actually play testing them, giving them enough time, and then letting them come out when they're actually finished. Now, I'm not saying that the game is supposed to be perfect. Of course there's going to be bugs and glitches that are going to go, get through the cracks. That's no big deal. But when it's happening at such a frequent rate, that's a really big problem, especially since, like I said, people are paying for these chapters. So when you pay for something, you expect to be able to use it in game. And a lot of these things, people in the community will give Dead by Daylight / Behavior constructive criticism about, and we won't get a resolution to these issues for months. Like, for example, like, let's say Freddy. Freddy, when he first came out to the game, a lot of rank 20 survivors complained about how quote-unquote OP he was, which is why, 2 OP or whatever has become a meme in the community of Dead by Daylight. But he came out, and everybody was saying, oh, he's too powerful, he's too powerful, he's too powerful. Well, not everybody, but rank 20s who aren't really good at the game. Well, when that happened, they nerfed Freddy to the ground, and then everybody realized, oh, okay, Freddy's like the weakest killer in the game, and it took Behavior over like a year to fix Freddy. And I'm not saying they didn't do a good job with Freddy, they did a really good job. He's actually a very solid killer now, and he has been since they reworked him, but it's like, does it really take a year to fix him? Another thing is, they haven't made a new map in ages. I mean, yes, recently they finally made a new map, the map for the artist, and I will say that chapter does look good, 100%, credit where credit's due, but they've been working on reworking and updating the maps for so long, and now it's like, are they even going to continue reworking them? Because there's still like 3 they have left to do. Mother's Dwelling, Haddonfield, and the Swamp, I think, are still needed to be reworked. So I'm not sure if they're going to put that to the side and be like, okay, whatever, those maps will stay as they are, and then, we'll just keep making new maps. But it is just very weird how they're doing that. So my closing statements in regard to Dead by Daylight needing competition, then I'll get on to VHS and Evil Dead the game and why they could be worthy competitors to the game, is just the fact that Dead by Daylight as a whole has this monopoly over the genre, and if that, if their role in this genre were to be threatened, like let's say VHS comes out and then not all obviously, but a bunch of players like start flocking over to that game, then Behavior is going to see that and be like, okay, there's a reason that they're flocking over to that game instead of playing our game. And then they're going to realize, okay, well, we need to start listening to them more. We need to start, fixing some of the bugs, fixing whatever, helping with the balance, whatever. And I think that's it. Competition is a good thing. I'm not saying this competition should come out and Dead by Daylight should be annihilated and nobody should ever play Dead by Daylight again. No, if competition happens for Dead by Daylight and they're big competitors with VHS and Evil Dead the game, then Dead by Daylight / Behavior will actually start to get their act together and be like, okay, well, now we need to start being better. We need to improve our game. We need to start, hunkering down and just putting in work and making this game as best as we possibly can. And that's a great thing for everybody, because obviously everybody wants a better Dead by Daylight. Nobody wants to play a game that's bad, or nobody wants to play a game that has a million problems. I don't get on Dead by Daylight every day because I'm like, man, fuck this game, I hate it. I like the game. I love the game. I've played it so long I can't not love it. But I do want improvement in a lot of areas in terms of the game, and I wouldn't say that people who want the game to be improved are entitled at all, because guess what? They're spending money on the game. When you spend money on something, and this is why Dead by Daylight boycott was so important, which I know it probably didn't really work that much, but it still probably showed behavior like, hey, look, we're kind of sick of this shit now. It was so important because people need to speak with their wallets. They need to, if you don't like something, but you want it to be better, like, for example, Dead by Daylight, like, if you don't spend money on it, you're not contributing to a game that you're complaining about. And that way, if a lot of people were to, if Behavior were to take a hit in terms of profits, which they're not really going to take that big of a hit, let's be honest. Not many people are going to boycott the game. Dead by Daylight has too many casual players to do that, and that's no offense to them. It's just a lot of people don't really read into things too much like a lot of us nerds do. So, yeah, if a lot of people were to hit Dead by Daylight in their wallet, essentially by not paying for chapters, not paying for, cosmetics or whatnot, then they would say, okay, we need to change because we're not making profits as much as we were. So with that being said, let's get right into why VHS is a really good competitor for Dead by Daylight, at least from what we've seen so far. So I have 3 major reasons plotted out of why VHS is going to be a good competitor for Dead by Daylight. The first one is because it's not super violent and gory. Now, you might be like, what the hell are you talking about? This is it's a horror game, like, it's a horror genre, so why do you care? Like, me personally, I'm a gorehound. I'm obviously a big Evil Dead fan, I'm a big Halloween fan, I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, all these other slasher movies. I love horror movies and all that. And obviously I played Dead by Daylight so long. I love gore and I love horror and all the terrifying shit. But in terms of a bigger audience, if you have a game that's more quote-unquote kid-friendly, and I'm not saying the game is necessarily for kids, it'll probably be rated like T for Teen VHS or something like that, because it does have violent themes in it. However, if it's the more cartoony and quote-unquote childish art style of the game, and I'm not saying it is childish, but just because it's more accessible for kids, I'd say, kids who have stricter parents anyway. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of us played very violent games as kids, but some parents don't let that shit fly. Now, however, if a parent sees their kid playing VHS and they see, oh, there's a cartoony art style with like little monsters, like cool monsters and all that, like Wart and the werewolf and the dollmaster or whatever, they might be like, okay, it's just like kind of like a cartoony game, like it's not overly violent or anything. So that already has a bigger audience that can come to the game, which is pretty cool. It's like, just to relate it to Marvel again, it's like how the MCU doesn't want to do rated R movies because they think that, more kids will be able to go see an Avengers movie versus like if they made a rated R Punisher movie or something like that. Now, while I would rather have a rated R Punisher movie, of course, than something like the Avengers, no offense to the Avengers, and something different, I do understand in terms of a business sense that they can get away with more if it's marketed a little bit more towards kids. The second reason is that it's free to play. Yet again, it's going to get a bigger audience because it's free to play and you're not going to have to spend any money getting it. So I could just be like, or some random guy could just be like, yeah, man, I'm pretty bored for tonight. And then his friend will be like, hey, dude, there's this VHS game. Man, I don't really feel like spending money. Dude, it's free. And it's like, oh, shit, all right, I'll download it right now on Steam or whatever when it comes out. So, obviously, that's a very easy way to get into the game because you don't have to pay for it. Whereas, like, if you're kind of short on funds, if you're a little broke, and you're like, I gotta find a new game, you're not gonna be able to if you're broke and you gotta, cut back on spending money on video games or whatnot. So that's obvious why that's gonna attract more players, just because it's like it's free to play. You could have more people go to it, and that way, if they like the game, they can support the game with buying cosmetics and stuff like that, which hopefully the price of cosmetics isn't too expensive, but because it's free to play, I would expect them to be probably the same price as like Dead by Daylight's cosmetics, so like 10-15 bucks, something like that, depending on the cosmetic. I would hope not, but like I said, because it's free to play, I would understand, why, because they have to make money. Whereas Dead by Daylight, the game is like, I don't know, I think I bought it a couple years ago for like 30 bucks for the special edition on PS4. So that was like 30 bucks, and then obviously 10 bucks for every cosmetic, 8 bucks or whatever for every chapter, and so on and so forth. But because of that, you're gonna have a bigger amount of people going to it because it's like, hey, yeah, why not? I'll try this game out. And then when they like it, hopefully they do. Hopefully it's a good game. Seems pretty good so far. Pretty good job so far. And then after that, they can start supporting the game by, paying for cosmetics, putting a bunch of hours into it, and whatnot. And the final and the most important reason why I think it's going to be a big competitor for DBD is because it seems like the studio, Hellbent Games, I think they're called, they are very, very, very clearly big fans of their own game, and it seems like a lot of them have put a lot of hours into understanding the game, and they've also looked at problems that other asymmetrical survival horror games such as Dead by Daylight, Friday the 13th, last year The Nightmare, have had in the past, and they're gonna work on them. For example, like a lot of people have issues with the balancing of Dead by Daylight. It seems like they're going a different route of balancing it, where the killer starts off really, really strong, and then over time the survivors can come more strong, especially with a teamwork element, whereas sometimes in Dead by Daylight it feels like you're just getting 1v1 by one survivor who's looping every damn pallet perfectly. So seems like they put a lot of time and effort into the game, and when people ask them questions, they always have very thought out responses, and very good responses in the sense that it's exactly what we want to hear. We know that, I think they said that like every couple days a couple people in the studio will be picked out to play like a couple matches with the rest of the devs, and that's good because that means they're playing the game, whereas there's a lot of people, including myself, who think the devs of Dead by Daylight don't play the game that much. I mean, I'm not saying all of them don't. Obviously, like people like Almo, and I think McLean, when he was in the game, streamed the game when he was developing. I think he's one of the devs that left though. When he was developing the game, was streaming it, and clearly they do play the game, but you can't just play the game for 2 hours and then understand everything about it. And I'm not saying that literally. I'm just saying as an example. Now, if you have hundreds of hours in the game and you're rank 1 on both sides, then you're gonna understand the game a lot more. So yeah, it clearly seems like they put a lot of effort and time into playing the game, so that way they understand, especially when the fans, community eventually get their hands on the main finished game and will be like, oh look, like this is, here's a problem with Wart, he's a little overpowered or whatever, and they'll be like, okay, well I see how people could say that, because we've played the game so much that we've seen his kill rate, or whatever you want to call it. So, that's a great sign. It is absolutely a great sign that they're looking at other mistakes that other developers have made with their asymmetrical survival games and working on that, and seeing how that will work in their own game, as well as playing the game a lot. That's a great sign for this game, and I think that's honestly one of the things that's made me so hopeful for the game. However, I won't be able to play it right away. I don't have a PC. I would love to get one, but it's not on my priority list right now. But hopefully the game becomes so successful that it will come to console, because it looks really fun and I would love to play it. So now to get on to Evil Dead the game, and actually my last reason for VHS the game is very similar to the next reason for Evil Dead the game, and why I think that'll be successful as well. So there's a guy on YouTube that I watch, his name's Degenerate J, and he made a video about Evil Dead the game and his concerns about it. And, you know, it's all good to have concerns about any game, because obviously you want the game to be good. And one of the developers of Evil Dead the game actually responded in the comments, and they said something along the lines of like, we understand fans, I'm probably getting it totally wrong, but they were basically saying something along the lines of, hey, we understand fans are passionate about the game and the franchise, we are too, and we're trying our best to make the game as good as possible. So that's already good, that when people have concerns, the studio or developer is responding in a professional and appropriate manner, instead of being like Neil Druckmann, aka Neil Cuckman from The Last of Us 2, Naughty Dog, who will go on YouTube or go on Twitter and then start attacking people who, you know, don't like the game. That's always a bad sign if you're attacking the people who criticize the game. But the developers of Evil Dead the game clearly seem to care, just like Hellbent Studios, VHS, and it's like them showing that they're actually going to listen to fan feedback is a great sign, because it shows, yet again, they care about the game and they want the game to succeed. So yeah, that's a great sign that the game will be awesome, as well as, because like I said, how they listen to the fans and want to listen to fans, they delayed Evil Dead the game to add a single player portion, because there were a lot of people, even me myself, I like the multiplayer style. I love single player games too, but there were a lot of people, probably particularly older fans of the Evil Dead series, because obviously it's an older franchise. There were a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s who are you know, excited for the game because they grew up with the franchise. I did as well, but I'm only 21. But so basically, like, a lot of people were saying, hey, you know, where's the single player mode? Where's the single player mode? I didn't want no multiplayer mode. Let's have a single player mode in this. Let's get a story mode. And we don't know if it's a story mode, but we do know that Evil Dead the game, the studio that making them Team Boss Games actually delayed the game to polish it, as well as add a single player mode. Now, odds are it's probably like a bot mode. That's what I would say. It's probably a bot mode. But them actually delaying the game to put things into it that people wanted is a great sign. I know a lot of people get bitchy about delays, but if a developer is delaying a game to make it better, which is like 9 out of 10 times that's the case, that's a great sign, just like I said. Now, the next reason is because the gameplay style is different than Dead by Daylight and VHS and Friday the 13th or whatever. Now, in most asymmetrical survival horror games, you can fight back, but it's not to the extent that Evil Dead the game is. Evil Dead the game is literally like, there's 4 survivors, and then there's the Kandarian demon who can control all the other Deadites and control like the Delta and possess trees and stuff, probably. Hopefully, you know, no one gets the Cheryl treatment from Evil Dead 1, but we'll see. So, you know, it's very different in the sense that Evil Dead the game, you can actually use guns, and I'm not saying you can't use guns in like VHS or Friday the 13th, because you can use a ray gun in VHS and you could use a shotgun in Friday the 13th. However, you only get one shot with the shotgun in Friday the 13th, and with VHS, I'm not really sure how the ray gun works, but it's obviously directed only towards one enemy, which is the killer or the monster. So it's Jason or Bort or the werewolf or Thomas or whatever in the respective games. But in Evil Dead the game, it almost has more of a Left 4 Dead type of feel. It's like Left 4 Dead meets Dead by Daylight or Friday the 13th or whatever, because you have this established horror franchise, but you also have it so that your main characters are fighting Deadites, which are demons, if you don't know. So it's essentially like the asymmetrical survival genre meets like a zombie survival game, which I think will draw a lot of people in, because a lot of people like to kill stuff. I mean, as Ash, I'm going to be running around with the chainsaw, cutting people down and shooting them with the boomstick, and then you're going to have people playing Kelly and Pablo and all these other players. So I think that's going to be very good for the game, just because it's like, it's in the same genre, but it's also very different, and it will attract people from other genres, because let's face it, not everybody's gonna like to just get chased around by a killer all the time. And I'm not saying, like I said, you can't fight back against the killer in these games, but I'm also saying, like, your main objective in a lot of these games, not VHS, because VHS, your objective is actually to kill the monster, but in Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th, your main objective is to escape. Obviously in Friday you can kill Jason, but you know what I mean. It's not the main objective. You're not going into every game thinking, let's kill Jason. And if you are, props to you. But this might attract more of a different kind of fan base, as well as it's going to attract people from Dead by Daylight or whatever other horror game, because obviously a lot of Dead by Daylight fans are horror fans. And guess who's in Dead by Daylight? Ash from the Evil Dead is in Dead by Daylight. So you're going to have a lot of people who maybe even haven't seen, you know, Evil Dead, and they're like, oh man, is that Ash from Dead by Daylight? Oh man, I gotta check these movies out, and then I'll go play the new game. Like, this looks cool. So there you go. And now that actually ties in with my third point, is that Evil Dead is an established horror franchise which has a big fan base. Now, excuse me. Now, granted, Evil Dead isn't the biggest franchise of all time. It's actually more of like a cult franchise, I guess, and there are a lot of people who know about it, but you can't go up to every single person on the street and they're gonna say, yeah, I know what Evil Dead is, I know what Ash is. You gotta be kind of a horror fan, or you need to at least grow up with people who are horror fans to probably know what the Evil Dead is. And there's a lot of people who I've met who don't know what it is, and there's a lot of people I've met who do know what it is. However, though, there still is that fan base for Evil Dead right off the get-go. So because it's such an established and big franchise, you're gonna have those people immediately flock over to that game, especially because it looks good and it is Evil Dead. So you're gonna have Evil Dead fans immediately get the game on day one and be like, this is awesome. And then if the game is successful because of that, you're gonna have more people come over to the game and be like, yeah, this looks cool, I'll go check out the movies or whatever, and then I'll, you know, play Evil Dead the game. Or it'll kind of work in a way that they'll play the game first and then be like, yeah, this is pretty awesome, I gotta check the movies and the show out, Ash vs. Evil Dead, yeah. So it'll kind of work in a good way for the Evil Dead franchise as a whole, in my opinion, and particularly for the game, because it's like, here's an example, like for VHS the game looks good, but if the game was like Halloween the game, you would have way more people going to it. And I'm not saying that nobody's going to VHS game, and obviously it looks pretty big. But I'm saying, like, if you had, like, okay, let's say you have, I don't know, some random game like Slasher Camp or whatever, which is just its own thing. It's not a licensed series. You might have a couple people, you know, a good portion of people come over to it. But then you have Halloween the game or whatever. People are gonna shit a brick because it's Halloween the game, and they're gonna go to it because it's already a big franchise and everybody knows Michael Myers. So in that sense, you're gonna already have an established fan base going to that game right off the bat. And particularly in response to the competition thing with Dead by Daylight, you're gonna have people who are, you know, like I said, they're like, oh shit, it's Ash, you know, he's in Dead by Daylight, let's go check it out. So it is probably gonna take some not customers away permanently, but it's probably gonna take some fans over to, you know, Evil Dead the game, because they're gonna be like, oh man, it's Ash, I gotta play this, you know, whatever. So I think that's a great thing, just because that way, you know, it's a license. A lot of people think that Evil Dead, or not Evil Dead, Dead by Daylight is so successful because of its licensed characters, and I can't help but agree with that in a way. It's not the only reason, but Dead by Daylight's the only game that has Michael Myers, Freddy, Leatherface, Ash, Laurie Strode, Pinhead, Pyramid Head, the Pig from Saw, you know, all these other characters, Ghostface, as well as these original killers and survivors that they've created on top of the licensed characters, so that's automatically going to have a big thing. Now, a lesson that I've learned and known from John Carpenter, my favorite director of all time, who directed Halloween, was he said that in regards to horror movie remakes, and this will tie in, is that when you make a movie that has an established name, such as the Halloween remake by Rob Zombie, which I fucking hate, but it's a good example, is that instead of making your own horror movie, you know, that's start from the scratch or whatever, which is sad that a lot of people aren't making original movies these days. Instead, they're just doing big franchises. But from a business perspective, it makes sense, because if you have a series like Halloween, people are going to go see it because they know the name. Maybe they saw it with their little brother when they were younger. Maybe they watched it with their mom. Maybe their dad took them to go see, you know, Halloween H2O or whatever in the 90s. So you're going to have those people who automatically know about it, and they're going to go right over to it. Now, another game that I'll briefly mention, because this is getting pretty long and I don't want anybody to be sitting around for 45 minutes listening to me rant. Another game that's being made is Gun Media, who made Friday the 13th, is actually making a new game. Now, what that game is, I don't know. The biggest two theories or ideas that people have is Halloween the game and Texas Chainsaw Massacre the game. Now, me personally, I prefer Halloween the game. I love Texas Chainsaw, but Michael Myers, he's my boy. However, there is a lot of reasons to think that is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Specifically, well, this is general and confirms that it's going to be at least one big horror franchise. Who knows, maybe it'll be Nightmare on Elm Street, which I doubt. But essentially, they asked like, oh, what game are you guys making next? And they just said like, it's basically a big horror franchise game, asymmetrical survival horror. Okay, so it is one of the big slashers. However, Wes Keltner, I believe he's like the lead developer on the game. I think he was for Friday the 13th as well. But he actually was doing like this little thing with like a music box or whatever he was streaming. Like he was using some sort of instrument. I'm not sure what it was, but I saw a clip of it. And the sounds that he was making were very reminiscent of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre soundtracks, or like things that you would hear in a Texas Chainsaw movie. So that's why, me personally, I do think that Texas Chainsaw is the game that they're making. However, that could easily just be him, you know, making random sounds. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied into the game, because he's not gonna, you know, he wouldn't, if he was making Halloween, he wouldn't just be like, you know, like doing the Halloween theme, in order to, you know, because then people would be like, oh shit, the next game's Halloween. But I do think that game, which would be a third big game now, that of course is would be another big horror franchise, and would probably take people away from Dead by Daylight in a way. Not, like I said, not permanently, but it's gonna draw people to that game, because it's like, oh shit, Texas Chainsaw Massacre game, Leatherface, let's go. So hopefully we get more news on that game soon. I would love to. There's like been nothing about it really, other than it's happening, basically. I would love to see whatever that new game is, and yet again, that'll be more competition for Dead by Daylight. So if Dead by Daylight, VHS, Evil Dead the game, and a possible Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Halloween the game were to be like all out at the same time, these 4 games would be like going head to head with each other. And all these games would probably be like, they would be working their hardest to make all these games their best. All these separate studios. So you got Dead by Daylight, you got Behavior and Hellbent and Team Boss Games and Gun Media all making their respective games. And then you're gonna have like people like me who are like, which one do I play like today or whatever. And that's a good thing, because then again, they're all gonna be on their fucking A game in order to make this shit as good as possible. Now, that's really all I gotta say on this one. I know it was a long one, but I've been planning on making this video for a while. I haven't made a video in a couple days because I've been working really long hours at my job. So, just, you know, bear with me. I'm trying to get acclimated to the long hours and figure out like a schedule to go for, because I would like to go have a schedule for my YouTube channel. However, it just hasn't happened yet. Life happens, you know, I'm young, I have a lot of stuff to do and figure out with my life. So, you know, if I'm not constantly updating the channel, I'm sorry, but I do think this was a good video to put out, especially with the new chapter coming out. And like I said, the new chapter looks good, actually. I'm surprised, as well as you have VHS the game and Evil Dead the game coming out, quote unquote, soon, trademark. So I do think it was a good time for me to put this video out. And yeah, that's all I gotta say on this one, folks. Y'all stay safe and stay groovy.